Hey everyone, welcome to your update for SOL and BTC today. So yesterday we were looking at these charts and liquidation levels and thinking that longs were feeling a little bit comfortable, too comfortable. Things were probably a little bit too easy. We had hit that 253 daily resistance level. We don't really have any reason to sort of push up. And most of our bigger support is sort of down lower than where we are now. We started flipping some trends to the top side in the last few days, and we've pushed up and we've hit a lot of those trends. And sure enough, those longs are now starting to squirm a little bit. So on the 1 day, we have pushed down and taken quite a bit of the liquidity, but there's still plenty. So we could easily push down to sort of like that 231 level on SOL, 114 or down. I'm sort of watching this 112 600, 112 800 level, as mentioned the other day, based on a 10-day trend shift, which was pretty confluent across BTC and SOL. So on both at the same time, we sort of shifted some support up to topside resistance, and then we made some pretty clear levels that had a lot of confluence across multiple time frames. So I'm sort of watching to see whether we come down to this 112, which would also mean coming down to about 214, which seems outside of the daily scope at this stage on SOL. But if we have a look up at our 7-day liquidity, then yeah, definitely we could be heading down to that 112 area, and that sort of gets us down into the 220s. And if we have a look at the 30-day liquidity, 30 days still got a lot of bullish longs in it. They're holding. They're probably at this point just thinking, oh yeah, it's going to be a little pullback, and it may be. They don't always come down and take all this, but certainly if they wanted to go and tap that 214, 213 area, even 210, there's a really big spike down there at 210, then the liquidity is there to do it. It's efficient to do it. They could just keep pushing down, triggering people's stop losses and keeping the price going down. Likewise, we've still got liquidity, that we can go and take to the upside. So, people are placing bets, and that's kind of all we want. We just want the markets to keep moving. If we were to get some kind of weekend pump, which can happen because you've got thinner order books. We've also, like today, we've only got a 1-day close and a 2-day close. I think there's one other bigger time frame close, but it's just showing us the same stuff that they've been showing us for the last few days as far as the broader range. And then tomorrow we have a prime day, and then we move into the weekly close, and even that's quite a volatile close, really, because it's just a 1 week. So we've got these few days coming up where they could go a little bit nuts, and do a big liquidity hunt either direction, and still within those few days come back to where we are now quite easily, because structurally there's not a lot that's going to change in the next couple of days. So perfect time for chaos and sweeping of liquidity. And the sentiment on X has flipped pretty quickly. As everyone was talking, retire on everything and let's go to 1,000 and all this kind of stuff. And now people are starting to talk, 95K BTC, and we told you it was going to dump after the rate cuts, and all that kind of stuff. But short version is everyone got really bullish. Liquidity built up to the downside. It became efficient for that liquidity to be used for players to open their positions, and we've had a bit of a pullback, and that is the market. So let's have a bit of a look at this from another direction. So we've been sideways just in the shorter term since we sort of came down to around this 115K area, and we have got some like low time frame supports in here, 4-hour supports, etc., which should just at some point, either now or just maybe just after daily close, might push us up into some of this 100x leverage in that 116 area. and just take that. So we're just bouncing around inside that support at the moment, just building up a little bit more liquidity. SOL is looking like it's trying to break out of its 1 hour downtrend. If it does, then yeah, it could see a push up to around that 240 area. There's definitely a lot of stuff building to the upside, but the problem is we just don't really have any hold levels, so it's hard to tell what will reject. Everything above price now is basically trend resistance, and trend resistance is horrible stuff to try and short because has it been hit before? If it has been hit before, how far through will it push? You just don't really know. You've sort of just got to wait and wait and wait and wait for candles to close, and sometimes they'll close above the trends and you'll short back to the trend and close your trade, and other times they basically just reject almost instantly. So yeah, all we've pretty much got at this stage until today, all we've got really above price is trend resistance. So I've also just been playing a little bit with liquidity indicator, which I just thought I'd show this to a few people just in case. So there's an option in there where you can actually turn on these little things which I've made into diamonds. So if you just go into the settings for the liquidity indicator, if anyone's using this, and there's a video in the educational section about how to set this up, but you can turn on things like directional bias, and you can also turn on things like market order bubbles, which I just changed to diamonds because there's too many bubbles in this thing otherwise. But what I found quite interesting is that you can see these groups of diamonds which are indicating that market orders are getting hit, and you'll notice they're not actually in liquidity areas. So this is stop losses effectively, because it's either that or people just manually choosing to market out of their trades in big groups. But it's quite interesting to look at how you might get a sweep down, a bunch of market orders triggered, and then a move up in the price before it actually gets to where the liquidity bands are. So it could be useful if people are trying to analyze reversals, because price doesn't always go to these red lines, contrary to what people think. So and liquidity is always forming and always changing. But if you can see a bunch of people getting stopped out because they might have chased whatever the pump was that was going on in here, and then they're getting stopped out as it comes back down here, that gives you a bit of an indication that once all those stop losses have been hit, they're going to want to take that and sell it up here at some kind of higher price. And likewise, if you start to see all these stop losses getting hit, it gives you an idea that, okay, well, they're probably going to want to come down with that now and sell it somewhere lower. So that might be a useful thing for people to turn on. Okay, let's have a look at these charts. So SOLBTC looks like we're probably, unless it has a big jump up, we're probably going to create a hold level here at 21024. So and it's hovering above the hold level to the bottom side here. So when it starts to hover like this, the thing is it can open the next candle and it can just keep on diving, and it can push all the way down here. So you could see either an initial push up into resistance and then a move down, or you could see a dive, just a straight out dive. But we haven't lost the trend, so that sort of indicates you might get a little bit of a pump, just before you see any kind of rollover into the resistance. So I'll sort of be watching this to see if we actually get a bit of a push up into this and then a rejection off that back down to the next trend. So that's, and then if we have a look at the dominance charts, well, they're kind of doing the same thing. They stopped just short of the trend. They stopped just short of the hold level. So they haven't triggered the resistance. They're pushing down, and what we might find is that we then get some kind of next candle open. You could get that initial rejection off the trend back to the bottom, and then a push back up to the hold level, which to do so it would have to push through the trend. So this is also just kind of playing a bit of a funny game where just kind of hovering in between, but I'd still expect that 64.31 level to get tagged, and it's just a case of whether do they go down a little first, and if they go down a little first on here, that means that SOL goes up a little, or gets strength over BTC again, and then after they come back down to this trend, do they bounce off the trend and then push up to the hold level, and then then your alts dump further. So there's something, yeah, definitely something being lined up here. They don't just hover in the middle of support and resistance, and unless they want more time on the next candle. And looking at our DXY balanced total market cap for risk assets, looks like we're going to create another hold level here at 366.24, and we're also going to lose the uptrend. So when this interior trend shifts to the bottom of this candle like so, it can create a move. So if it pushes up into the hold, that's when you'll see that general little pump. But then after it hits that hold, it could reject down and break the trend, and that's sort of the little fake pump into the dump, or you could get a little fake dump into a pump. So it all kind of depends on which way it goes, but they're exactly like the previous two charts. They're setting up to do some kind of up and down move. And if we look at that from a non-DXY based level, 3.78 looks like we're going to introduce a hold level there. And by the way, this stuff can change. Obviously we've still got 2 hours and 25 minutes to go on the day. If we do just get some magic tweet pump or something, it can come back up. So this is not technically losing the uptrend, but if it closes down around this price or anywhere below that sort of 3.76-ish level, sort of anywhere below there, then what it is going to do is it's going to approach that hold level from the wrong side, in which case it typically creates more downside, when that happens. But we do have some very condensed trends sitting down here around that 3.64 area. So if it hits those, you should then be able to get a pretty decent bounce back up. So bullish side of things, if this was to just absolutely fly up and not create this hold level and close up over 3.78 for the day and back inside the channel, then we could just expect some kind of explosion up to the top side here in that 3.94. But at this stage it would take some kind of magic tweet for that to happen. We don't have that yet. So looking at BTC specifically, similar. So it's down below its interior trend. It hasn't lost its daily range, so 114.3 is sort of the bottom here. That's also going to be the retest of a down-facing range trend. So down-facing range trends are a little bit risky to long because, as you can imagine, the price can bounce between them, horizontal levels or trends, but every time it bounces back to the range trend, it's going to be at a lower price because of the down-facing nature of the trend line. So the hold level that's back up here on the daily, which is sitting around 116.395, we could creep up a bit before the end of the day and then have a bit of a fight between the standard uptrend and the hold level. That could happen, and then one of them will lose. Or the other thing is we could close where we are now, have a dump to the 114 level, and then maybe push back up to the hold. Now, or I suppose the other option is too that we just do get a little bit of a bullish pump up into the hold and then down. And if we approach it from the underside here and go up into that hold, then the most probable thing is that we then reject down to the next trend, which would have confluence with the break of the range, which would have confluence with the range trend. I mean, that's a pretty good place to go and test. Now, where it all goes to custard is if it closes under there tomorrow on a prime day, because then there's no other bigger structure implications to that tomorrow. But if it does do that, then it can just take a nice dive all the way through, any liquidity that's down in this lower area, and that gets you down to that sort of 112 area, funnily enough, in which case it could come back up before the end of the day, and it hasn't changed anything, and all it's done is just liquidate a bunch of people. So it could be gearing up for a decent sort of downside sweep, which lines up with things like those 10-day projections from a couple of days ago and what they are looking to do. So yeah, I guess it would be pretty wishful thinking to think we're going to get back up over 116.395 before the end of the day. We could. If we do, we don't have a hold level. We still have trend support. We would then bounce up and test this upper level back in that 117 area again. We actually didn't test the trend after it moved either, so it's just this thing's just asking to basically swipe both directions. And we're also conscious that our high time frame resistance is at 117.899, and we stopped at 117.855. And yeah, I don't know. There's usually a reason why they do that kind of thing. So maybe we do go sweep this trend into the high time frame resistance and then have a push down. But I guess if we open on the wrong side of the trend, that's going to be a pretty obvious fake pump that you definitely want to look at fading, because it's going to be pushing through trends, hold levels, trends, sweep. Yeah, that's it would be like one of the most bearish longs you could see happen, basically, if they did that. Okay, 2-day close today. So 2-day is actually technically trying to hold the price up, because we went into this 115 area on the 2-day, and so it's trying to keep the price up, but where it is, it looks like it might just open on the wrong side of the trend. So the fight, in this is basically between the hold level support at 115.870 and whatever the trend was, which was 116.148, kind of around there at the time. So it's fighting between these. If it opens on the wrong side of the interior uptrend, then it just gives you this sort of resistance area around that 116 area, which it can just reject off. It's all pretty, confluent with the other stuff. And, you've got a range trend on the 2-day coming through here around that 114. So it does get a bit more bearish if the day closes under 115.300, because then we've got another hold level. So then we'd have a 2-day and 1-day, and that could stop us from getting up to the 1-day even. We could just reject more quickly and push down. So those are pretty much the levels to be watching on there. And over to SOL. Okay, so SOL's diving all of its support. So overall, when this happens, you typically see the price try to bungee cord back up towards the trends before close. So this sort of lines up with, it's trying to break out of its hourly downtrend. It's trying to move back up. It really comes down to whether it gets over 244.719 before the end of the day. If it does that, the whole picture changes, really, because it could just bounce off the trend support and then head back up to the top side and have another go at the relocated resistance, because this moved trend yesterday to 253, but it hasn't gone and tested it. And all of this downside action has been getting people bearish and bringing shorts in. So now we've got all this liquidity that's sort of up here above 253, and anywhere sort of up around 260 to 265. This is all filling up here with people's shorts and stop losses and liquidations. So, what this does before the end of the day is going to be a pretty good sign of intent as to whether they take a sweep of that area and then potentially come back down, or whether we just continue to ladder down from here. So if it closes anything below 244.719, then we get a hold level. What we might also end up with here is some kind of origin level. If we get one more day to the downside, then 249.5 becomes a bigger rejection level. So it'll be interesting to see how today turns out and how that affects this. And either way, you might get one more day of down, then a move up into the origin level, and then a bigger rejection. But most of the high time frame stuff is pointing below where we are now, so I don't think this should really be the bottom for SOL. I think we should see more of a downside, but like I say, typically you push into resistance, hit resistance, then go down. So you might get a little bit of a pump and then a dump. Hence the 2-day. So the 2-day is still just trying to hold the price up. So this, this has got a target, and the way that this actually played out was because the trend was in the way of the 249 target. What happened was it went down into support, it went up to the trend, it rejected off the trend, and now it's pushing back down again. So this wants to go back to 249 again. It wants to go revisit the beautiful holiday destination that's sitting there at 249. But it's also looking like it may open on the wrong side of the trend. So if it does that, it's probably going to have more rejection before it can really go back up. And with your other trend, etc., that's running through there, sort of around that 245 area, it's pretty confluent with the daily hold level that may get created today. So yeah, I think this move is pretty much on its last legs. But if they do a sweep and decide to grab all that liquidity that's forming up there above the trend, then we've seen it before. They've already kind of swept it once, just looking at this time frame with that wick that's on this candle. But they could just pull that back up a wee bit before the end of the day. And the target for the hourly hold is 240. So if the hourly move actually plays out before the daily close, then this could be on the top side of trend, and then it could do that sweep. So yeah, a lot can change. Gotta love crypto. A lot can change in 2 hours. Okay, and this is just I guess a reminder of some of the stuff that's going on from a couple of days ago, where basically we hit trend resistance, old trend resistance, and we're pushing back down. So these moves, given their 9-day time frames, they can take time, to play out. But we started on the top side of it, so ultimately, if this finds some support, maybe down here around the 220s, or could come all the way back down to here. If we find some support anywhere on this thing, then because we started on the top side of that trend, naturally what it wants to do then is just go all the way back up and flip the candle upwards. So it's still overall positive. And oh yeah, there's our 1 day. There's our little 1 day. 1H trying to break. It created a hold level. I just talked about this in the Discord today. If you look at these two candles here, it's a 0.002 margin on that hold level, which is pushing the price up to try and break the trend. So it just goes to show decimal points can matter. But yeah, this time frame is one of the ones where we shifted that trend to the top side the other day. So when we closed, what was that, on the 18th of September? So when we closed that, we shifted the trend to the top side. We've rejected off it, and we should really be heading back to this trend through here, or this support hold level here at 214. So yeah, if we can get down into these 214 levels, then you could probably consider more positional trades, like starting to layer into positional trades for whatever the next move up is. But this stage, it's It's a bit of a risky area here when you've got a high time frame trying to push the price down. If you're trying to long, you may just end up scalping things like, trend breaks on lower time frames. That's all right. And I think that's pretty much us for the day. Still not much going on SOE. Yeah, I just put if you just want a lazy entry for whatever the next upswing move is, just add some alerts to a couple of these trends, and if it lands on those anywhere over the weekend, if we have some kind of dump over the weekend and it lands on those, you could consider taking a trade and just target the break level up at $4.30. And NA, it didn't actually hit the 1 day level down here. It was just, I'm not totally familiar with this token, so I don't know every time frame that's in play, but there's this little gap down here, so you could consider a long on the daily if it comes back down into there. The other thing that will happen today on this is that the daily interior trend will shift, so you may just bounce off that even and then come back up here and target the new break level. So you could look at some kind of move from trend to break, and it hasn't retested the range up here at 73.40 either. So once this finds support, it's going to target these newer daily breaks, and it's going to target things like retests of this hard close level up here. So there's probably some little daily swings that you could take on this. What would be a pretty good entry would be if it has some kind of dump down and dives into this daily support below the trend, because you could actually look to take a minimum TP on that and then set your stop loss at break even and see if you get a push up to these higher levels following it. So yeah, you could look to take it daily on that, but just bear in mind it's still in a monthly rejection down to 054.28. So you might just end up getting stopped out after you take your initial little scalp. So we on the daily is pushing back below trend. So it's not too much. Basically just a rejection of the older break level and the newer break level. So similar to SOL, if this has one more day to the downside, then it'll create origin levels up here at these 3.8 and 3.89. Then you could get a tap into that and a bigger rejection. I'm still a little bit on the fence as to whether they're actually planning a really big dump that comes soon, and do we see that bottom end of the range, because the range on things like BTC is still really big. So it's we could head to the 90s, and we can head to sort of like the 124, 126 area. So it's still a really big range, and some of the stuff, the hold levels, they don't really bother me too much, but it's just if we generate origin rejection levels off the break levels, they are big. And then if we do those on things like daily timeframes, we could see a pretty decent pullback happen. So what's next? World Liberty Finance. So that might make a hold level. So and it might also make a up-facing range trend as a target, which is that. So there's your channel coming through there. So yeah, this could be a long off pretty much anything, but lower the better if you can get into this, particularly if they do a liquidity sweep. You'd almost want to enter on the sweep. But the lazy entry would be to start pretty much kind of where it is now. 2208 would be sort of lazy entry. And then target the break level up here at 2332, or the first touch of this up-facing range trend. This is going to move its downtrend today if it closes yellow, so that's going to be there. So this would be your target area up in here. Definitely be taking profits if it gets up into anything above that break level at 2332, just because you'll have the new trend, you'll have a range trend, you'll have a break level which could be argued as some kind of origin level, and it may even just bounce off that. So 2248, yeah, because there's not a huge amount of room to move in this one between here and here. What are we, 1.79%? So it'd be a safer entry if it did a sweep, some kind of sweep of the trend liquidity. But yeah, if it goes bullish, it'll just bounce from that hold level and go up. Okay, what else we got? ZEUS. I think it's just still needs to make up its mind as to whether it dies. So don't long this. Don't long this. Not yet. Looks very dicey. 2 days to go. And Cook, yeah. This would almost be better if it actually pulled back a little bit more, went up, closed down, and then moved the trend. So that would give it the option to bounce off the trend. It's kind of, so don't probably do much with that in the next 2 days. And hype seems to be pulling back towards the trend. Yeah, so again, just need to see how this closes. It's either going to shift, the trend to the top side, and it'll either have a wick here or it won't have a wick. And if it does have a wick up on the top side here, then it's going to give us a range effectively where we can reject and then come back down to test these horizontal levels, or it gives us a target where we can come down, test the horizontal levels, and long back up. But it's still kind of just a nothing yet. And SAY's pulling back a bit, so still just do nothing on that, but look at it as a monthly move for next month if it holds the way it should hold. Yeah, cool. That's us for today. So like and subscribe. I see there's 14% of people who watch these videos on a regular basis aren't actually subscribed. So if you're one of those 14%, then hit that subscribe button and come join us in the Discord and so on. And we'll catch you all again on the next one. Cheers. Bye.